I watched it this past summer as we were building Pi, go from like a couple dozen people who I couldn't identify from a distance to hundreds of people on the beach, all through Sunday Morning Club, which was built on Pi, and where the distribution mechanism was Instagram stories. So it's basically like Kyle talking about doing the Sunday Morning Club thing on Instagram, pushing it out via Pi link, and on Pi is where you could sign up and see who was going. And that created the snowball of momentum in addition to the details of what was going on. And so I went down there one day and was like, I got to check this out. I saw a Muslim woman in a burkatini, which I had not seen on Oak Street Beach. And I went up to her and I said, how did you hear about Sunday Morning Club? And she goes, oh, I found it on Instagram. And I was like, okay, so what brought you down? She's like, I come from a culture where we don't drink, and it's so hard to find fun, cool things to do that young people are doing that don't revolve around drinking. So she says to me, I thought I would just drive down and check it out. And I was like, oh, drive down. You live in the north suburbs. She's like, I live in Dearborn, Michigan. And I was like, wait a second. You drove 5 hours like last night?
Welcome to We're Not Recording, candid conversations brought to you by Athena. Athena is the company that pays Melanie and my salary, so we would be remiss not to shout them out, though we promise this isn't another boring business podcast. Athena makes compliance training people actually like and has a bunch of other required tools your company probably needs. Everything from employee hotlines, HR case management tools, phishing simulator, and more. If you don't like your company's mandatory training, tell your HR or legal teams to check Athena out.
Hi, I'm excited to introduce one of my absolute favorite entrepreneurs in an incredible conversation we had. I sat down with Andy Dunn. You might not know his name, but if you check the logo of your pants and you are wearing Bonobos, that is the company that he co-founded and then sold to Walmart. But I think you should also know him because he has an incredible book, Burn Rate, that talks about his journey with both entrepreneurship and having bipolar disorder. It's 11 out of 10, one of the best business books I've read because it doesn't read like a business book. We chatted about loneliness, culture building, and he even shared an exciting update at the end. Hope you enjoy.
My intro of you would have to include that you're the founder of Bonobos, which is very important to me personally because it is heavily represented in my husband's closet. So thank you for helping him look fit. Right, is crucial. And then you wrote a phenomenal book called Burn Rate. I think, in my humble opinion, many business books are bad. This is like the opposite of a business book. It's like a deeply personal memoir that I just thought was like 10 out of 10, really, really good. And now you have founded a company called Pi, which, as I understand it, but I'm sure you'll tell me, is kind of tackling like a loneliness, social media, but in the social sense of it, not in the sad, doom scrolly sense of it. The first thing I wanted to ask you about is loneliness, because I think you've been thinking a lot about this. I've caught some of your like LinkedIn posts. I'm an aging millennial. And maybe like first question is like, how do you think about it personally in terms of like, have you thought differently, maybe like post-pandemic and all of it, of like how you invest in like keeping relationships strong? I feel like, especially as a parent, I can like go the whole day basically just working and talking to my like tyrant children now. And like, I don't really invest that much in new friendships. Is this bad?
This is bad. It's also typical. It's also typical. And for me, it's evolved a lot from before building Pi to now. When we moved from New York City to Chicago 3 years ago, I thought, okay, I'm going home. My social life is going to be great. I've got my mom and dad are there. My sister, brother-in-law and niece are here. I like my wife. She's coming with. I like my son. He's cool. I had a couple of friends, some people that I knew pretty well over the years, and then a couple of other people I didn't know as well, but I felt like, okay, I'm going home. Like, I know people. And then the one person who I was the closest with left and moved, and everyone else was pretty busy, which I had a lot of empathy for as a busy person. But it took me about 2 years to realize I actually really miss having deep platonic friendships. I miss guy friends, basically. I miss men. And in my previous world, pre-pandemic, pre-Pi world, that happened. I had that sustenance in a couple ways. First, I had friends who I'd known for a long time, wherever I lived. in New York City, for example, my best friend I've known for 20 years was there, and we saw each other every week, right?
Yeah.
And then I think, and this isn't to be underestimated, if we like our jobs and if we belong to a real tribe at work, we develop work friends. And there's a lot of research that shows having one person in the world who you can be 100% honest with is half the battle from a human emotional management standpoint. And so when we grow up, often it's kind of cliche, but often this is one of our parents, often it's our moms. And then we get to a life stage where we can't tell our moms everything, or maybe we don't get to. And then we kind of ping pong between friends until maybe we get to a spouse who we can do that with. But as you know, and as I know, working spouses, you can't complain about your spouse to your spouse, right? You can work on it, but you can't just have a like unfiltered, whatever the heck comes out of my mouth conversation always or frequently or when you need it. There's a lot of codependencies. So I realized I really miss that. I miss having friends at work, and I miss having platonic friends outside of my personal life, my familial personal life. And that was sort of like the aha of, okay, let's go work on that.
I love this and so many things to like follow. Maybe quickly. Melanie, our chief people officer, and I were just recording a podcast, and we were talking about this benefit Athena has. It's like $100 a month for employees, and they can spend it any way they want. Mani pedis, go bowling, whatever. You just have to like be with another employee, and it can be remote or in person, and it's totally unstructured. And I was just thinking about your point of like having one, work friend is like really powerful driver of retention or whatever. Do you think there's things like companies can do to sort of encourage bonding that don't feel like what was to me peak COVID of like, oh my God, not another virtual happy hour. I'm so unhappy in these virtual happy, or like I was in the army, there was a lot of like mandatory fun. Like, hey guys, strongly encourage that you go to this baseball game. And I was like, I don't want to go, but like I got to, because you may, like I feel like people both like want friends, but then they like don't want to do stuff.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a hot take depending on who you talk to, and it's not easy for everyone to do this if this isn't something that you currently do. But for me, it was going 100% all in on pre-pandemic working norms, which is we're in person every day. And I think we were lucky in that the company wasn't working as a hybrid organization. We couldn't find, the colloquial product market fit. We had raised $12 million. We'd been at it for almost 4 years, and the company was either going to fail or make a dramatic change. And so the dramatic change was, I live in Chicago now. I moved from New York to Chicago during the building of the company. I feel like I have a deeper understanding of the problem. And I think if we want to build a company that launches a movement of more IRL connectivity, we need to eat our own cooking or drink our own Kool-Aid or whatever it is and live that value, right? Live that mission. So I went out to our then 7, not a big team, but 7 people. And I said, we're going to go in person. It's going to be Chicago because I live here. Sorry. I love New York. I'd love to go back, but I can't.
Yeah.
California's great wherever people were, but it's going to be here. And I'll give you 3 months cash bonus. And I love the city. I'll personally be your Zillow apartment hunting agent, and I'll take no fee. And I'll walk you through the neighborhoods and find you a great place to live. And we'll set it up so that we'll select an office location that is close to whoever comes. And I was realistic. I thought like 7 people, maybe 2 people will come. We'll take a little nucleus. I'll have like a little team and we'll rebuild. 0.
Yeah.
Everyone said no.
Wow.
Everyone said no. And to me, it was terrifying and exciting. The terrifying part was, oh shit, I'm going to be the only employee of the company in a few weeks. And then the exciting part was we get to kind of do a do-over on everything. And that gave me a chance to find people who wanted to opt into that. And to say, by the way, people will be like, okay, in person, yeah, I like it, 3 days a week, 4. It was like, no, it's like all in person. And it's like, wait, well, what if I have a doctor's appointment? It's like, okay, you're cool. If you have a doctor's appointment, you're good. But just think about the way the world operated prior to the pandemic, and that's how we operate. Like it's an in-person company. And that has helped a lot, I think, with moving away from a virtual happy hour to like an actual karaoke night. But I have been really inspired by some founders who are like, you know what, this is more important to winning and we have to do it and we have to make a hard change. And obviously we're seeing it in, Jamie Dimon's blowing up in a team meeting right now around, managers will not have discretion. We're going back to in person. And I think there are, it's good and bad. It's probably bad for working parents, right? But
Totally.
it's not, we can't optimize everything in our lives. We have to make trade-offs.
Yeah, I think if not asking, but I'm giving my opinion on like the RTO thing, like um the revolt would start for me with both me and my co-founder because we both have like young babies now, and it's just like I took like a 3-week mat leave my first time, but I was able to come
Yeah,
back to work
I remember that.
fast. Yeah. Because it was remote, right? So it's like, okay, well, like whatever, if like my kid's sick, it's fine. But I think it's like very reasonable for people in different, to your point, like seasons of life. Like in my 20s, I had super in-person jobs. I was in the army, I was at McKinsey. Like those were both very like, like client or mission centric jobs. And I think it's like different strokes for different folks at different stages of their lives, which I think is reasonable. Maybe like a spicy question is, do you think that companies that have some version of hybrid or remote can encourage connection with employees that doesn't feel like that, like Zoom happy hour?
I think so. Yeah, you know better than me because you're working on some of that. I think what you're doing with the budget to encourage people to do that is super cool. I think investing in travel, investing in your travel line item is kind of the new corporate rent. I think, we are all used to in the era of having in-person companies having a corporate rent line item that's pretty meaningful, between 2 and 10% for a startup, can go into that. And as that comes down, because maybe there's less of a thing, rent or whatever, the hybrid office can be much smaller. Having that in, bringing people out. So for example, at Pi, we just in the last month hired 3 non-Chicago based team members because we're building field teams to be able to build an on the ground in-person movement requires people in person on the ground. And, the next month is expensive travel wise. We're flying all 3 of them here for a week. Then we're almost all going to South by Southwest, which is very expensive. And we actually had a debate yesterday about a team member coming. And I was like, I don't care how much money it costs within reason. The value of having that person there is super high. And we're going to get a good return on invested capital in that because so much asymmetric potential in relationship formation and in ideation presents through social collision and serendipity.
Totally. And I think that the most important thing is kind of what you were saying of upfront being really candid about like this is the company culture like you're buying into, so like if you're being really clear about like, hey, it's gonna be 50, 60-hour weeks and like this isn't gonna be the like best balance you've ever had in your life. I think just like really being clear about that early is like the move, because like a lot of people want to opt into that and other people do not. And just being clear about that lets people sort. So I think that makes sense.
I think so. And I think it's worth acknowledging there's a third model, which is, look, you're just not going to get your friendship through work. It's okay. My friend Eric, who runs chess.com, founder and CEO of chess.com, they've been remote for 2 decades. And just the deal is it's fully remote. You have maximal flexibility on how you conduct your life. And yeah, you have camaraderie with people that you see on Slack and Zoom and stuff, but you have so much flexibility in your calendar design and in where you can be geographically that we're all adults. We can find other ways to develop connection, right? And that's what we're working on at Pi is we want to assume that there are people that aren't going to be able to solve for friendship through the quote unquote normal channels, which might include work. And let's create an opportunity for people who want to be intentional about platonic friendship formation to be able to do that, irrespective of what the circumstances are that led them to having that unmet social need.
Okay, wait, fascinating point. And next I'll ask you about Pi and like how you're doing that. But just to follow up on the chess point, I feel like I'd heard of this guy somehow in like podcast is founder Ethos. So I was thinking about like I was at McKinsey for a minute, and it was very much a place where it was like people had their whole social life at work. And I'll just be like candid, I thought that was like a little weird. I don't know why. And then the army was the same thing, and it kind of made sense. You like literally lived together, you would travel together. So it was like there wasn't really a distinction. I don't know if you watched Severance, but there wasn't like innies and outies. It was like this is your whole life. Like you're just with these people all the time. And I've been thinking about Athena, the company I run, as like kind of a place that seems like it's attracting a type that's a little bit more too cool for school is totally not the right term, but like a little bit more like I like working here, but also I have like a life, and that life might be my family, that my life may be something else. But like, I don't think we're like the best place for if you're like a young 20 something who wants their whole like social life to be kind of dictated by work. You will be like very disappointed by being here because like it'll be crickets, you know? I'm just curious, like, tell me a little more about, like, I don't know, either what your friend believes or what you think about this idea of kind of either having like true, like, this is kind of a, we work hard, we play hard. The most extreme version of this is like the we work, Adam Newman sort of like,
Yeah.
thank God it's Monday kind of vibes. But like, any thoughts on my ramblings?
No, I think it's such a great set of thoughts. And I think what you said about McKinsey and the Army is revealing in that. And I had the same experience when I was at Bain and when I worked in private equity. I think a lot of it is generational cohort driven. So I think the value of having an innie and outie unified life
Yeah.
is the highest when you're in your 20s,
Yeah.
where
Cause it's
you're
like, I'm
generally,
alone. Like, I
yeah,
got
you're
nothing else going on.
generally, yeah, you're generally, by statistically the lowest probability of being married and having kids of any age. You're with a group of people that are going through that same stage of life. I mean, it's so beautiful, your 20s, right? So much is possible in terms of who you might be. Who are you going to be professionally? Who are you going to be romantically? Are you going to be a parent or not one day? Is that even on your mind? Where are you going to go next year? And I think that expansiveness and that journey of self-discovery is such a wonderful thing to be doing with people who are at the same stage. And also that's natural that that would be the case. And it's also a time where probably you can distort your energy into your work. You can be in the Army, which is pretty immersive in a way that's different, being an Army captain or whatever 20 years later. So one of the things that fires me up about what we're doing is we are creating a petri dish and a training ground for Gen Zers who want to have an immersive, hardcore startup life that also has got the camaraderie and the bonding that comes from that.
Yeah.
And then I think it's also important that as you get to people that are at other stages of the game, like, moving towards the executive ranks, that you're not like participating in that. Like, I've been in environments where the person in my role is like one of the people out partying or whatever. And I think at some point that's like not that cool of a look. So I kind of encourage more work-life balance up the age scale
Oh, I
be,
see
be,
that. Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
like we got to earn our stripes, right? And so
Yeah.
I tell my executives in their 40s, late 30s and 40s, like we got to hold these up and comers accountable to doing exceptional work because that's what people did for us at that stage. And then it's just organic that if a bunch of energetic, amazing people in their 20s and 30s, early 30s are around each other, they're going to socialize.
Yeah.
So I like it where it's not the official norm, but there is sort of a what makes sense for you where you are in your life thing that is emergent. I also remember that from consulting where it was like enforced drinking, it felt like, and it was up and down the age stack. And I feel like in retrospect, I kind of admire the people who were like not a part of that, who were older. I loved the people that were older that were out with us. But now, like now that I'm 46 tomorrow and going to be and I'm a dad, I kind of like, I want to go see my wife and kid at night. Like, I don't want to go to a work thing. So I need to be my best self and bring my energy when I am around the team. And when I surgically can go to something like last night, I went to a trivia night that was, something that I wanted to go experience because we're working on AI group matchmaking for trivia. And I had an amazing night. Like, it was so fun. And then I went home, but it was a conscious decision. Like, I had to really think about, like, is this the right night to be doing this? Because I'm not going to see my son on his first day of kindergarten. So I think it's a life stage thing. I learned that when I was at Walmart after Bonobos was acquired by Walmart and watching the way that Doug McMillon, the CEO, behaved, who I adored and admire so much. And he was so present and was so into it, like at work, and then, light social things, but like then he was like gone.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Well,
that's a
there's
way to be a leader as well, is absence. Like be
no, totally.
absent so that people can be without you too. Right? It's
Totally.
like sometimes I feel guilty when I leave to travel for a week, and I feel like the team has some of their best weeks because they get to work together without, the CEO being a pain in the neck, for good and for bad.
Weird. I thought that everybody wanted to hang out with me all the time, but now I'm having a reflection. Also side note, I went to bed at 7:30 last night. I was feeling quite ill and I was like, man, talk about like this is late 30s life. Like oof, the happy hours are Dunsky.
Well done
Okay.
though.
It was great. Honestly, I took NyQuil and I went to bed and I was just like, well, I'll see you tomorrow. Like we'll just start the day again. Would love to know a little bit about Pi and maybe like what it's teaching you about how like even like small things that people can do in their personal life to like nurture these friendships, whether they're at work or like outside of work.
Yeah. So at Pi, our vision is for a world where doing things you like with people who you enjoy should be as easy as calling an Uber. That's the vision, that you can kind of press a button and you're not going to make friends with pressing a button, but you're going to be in a situation where there is the kindling for human connection. And so the app is a social app for making friends. What we do is we present anyone who comes into Pi, we call these folks joiners rather than users. So rather than using a digital product, you're joining an IRL experience with somewhere between 75 and 100 things that they can do that week that are cool, unique, largely free experiences. And those experiences are hosted by what we call IRL creators. And these are people who have a deep passion for gathering others with community-driven rituals. So an example, there's a guy here in Chicago named Kyle. Kyle was an alcoholic until the age of 28. He decided he was sick of that. He stopped drinking. He all of a sudden was awake on Sunday mornings and had a lot of energy versus being hungover in bed till noon,
Because he was going to
which
sleep at 7:30. No,
yeah,
but
maybe
I
7:30.
see you. Yeah.
And he set up a hang on Oak Street Beach in Chicago that went from a dozen people to hundreds of people playing beach volleyball, doing yoga, cold plunges in kiddie pools, healthy snacks, just chatting and getting together around like a healthy lifestyle, like a healthy Sunday morning. And this happens to be across the street from where I live. And I watched it this summer, as past summer, as we were building Pi, go from like a couple dozen people who I couldn't identify from a distance to hundreds of people on the beach, all through Sunday Morning Club, which was built on Pi, and where the distribution mechanism was Instagram stories. So it's basically like Kyle talking about doing the Sunday Morning Club thing on Instagram, pushing it out via Pi link, and on Pi is where you could sign up and see who was going. And that created the snowball of momentum in addition to the details of what was going on. And so I went down there one day and was like, I got to check this out. I saw a Muslim woman in a burkatini, which I had not seen on Oak Street Beach. And I went up to her and I said, how did you hear about Sunday Morning Club? And she goes, oh, I found it on Instagram. And I was like, okay, so what brought you down? She's like, I come from a culture where we don't drink, and it's so hard to find fun, cool things to do that young people are doing that don't revolve around drinking. So she says to me, I thought I would just drive down and check it out. And I was like, oh, drive down. You live in the north suburbs. She's like, I live in Dearborn, Michigan. And I was like, wait a second. You drove 5 hours like last night? And she's like, no, I got up this morning at 3 to come. And for me, that was a great story that shows how deeply we desire to connect with others
Yeah.
in a way that is communal. And so the beauty of Sunday Morning Club is it's every Sunday and it becomes a ritual. And the reason that the ritual matters is that the science on relationship formation shows, great book called Platonic by Dr. Marissa Franco, that we need to see someone 5 to 7 times in a group setting that is unplanned, an unplanned run-in, to create the conditions for the second ingredient in friendship formation, which is mutual disclosure of vulnerable information. So you run into someone again and again, and then at some point I say, hey, Roxanne, like something you don't know about me, but like I've got this history of dealing with bipolar depression and just wanted to tell you about that, or like I'm going through a tough time right now. And you're like, wow. And all of a sudden our relationship has changed because I've confided in you. And maybe then you're like, hey, I've dealt with this, or maybe not. But then later you now have like an opening because trust has been extended to you to reciprocate. And now if you reciprocate and you say like, oh man, like could be the next time I'm dealing with this thing with my child, whatever. Now all of a sudden we know each other a little different than two founders on a podcast. We know like something more real and essential about each other's nature and experience. Okay, now we're on track to fork off from the group and do something that is when the friendship kind of begins, when you start to go one-on-one. And even the one-on-one tends to be in a group setting. So it wouldn't probably be like, do you want to get lunch? It would be me checking in later in the week, being like, hey, I'm going to Sunday morning club this weekend. Are you going? It's like confirming you're going to be at a thing. And we realize all of this could be done through an app. We could host all these community rituals on the app. We could help people see when someone was going to the next thing. And we could create the conditions for that social collision. And that was kind of the beginning of what we call this IRL creator economy, where we're now finding a way for the people like Kyle to make money from what they do.
Yeah.
So that it could become like a gig economy, almost like Uber or Lyft or Airbnb, where you can earn money from doing the work of convening others, which is critical because it eventually costs money to invest. Someone's got to buy the kiddie pools, and our time is valuable. So we're at about 110,000 monthly active users now in just a year. We have over 100 creators who we've signed to our creator fund in Chicago, in the Bay Area, and in Austin. And it's like so fun. We're just having the time of our lives over here.
I love this because Athena has little hubs in those cities. So this is like maybe we have some of our folks go check it out or whatever. Which
That's why I'm here. Actually, I'm just here for joiner acquisition. I didn't really give a shit about the podcast.
Well, you've got like 4 new people in Chicago now. So I hope this is a good return on your time. Okay, so I love that, and I love the example of like or the framework you gave for like the shared vulnerability. This is I go to a CrossFit gym, and I go to a 6 a.m. class because it's the only class that parents can go to. And I feel like it's taken me like a year and a half to like actually make friends in the class, even though I see these people like, almost like daily, every other day for a year and a half. And then it'll be like, someone will mention like whatever they're have parents coming in or this or that. And it's just like kind of amazing how, watching the difference between my 4-year-old who's like, I made 5 friends today. This is Julian. We're besties, and you're like, oh my God, you little people with no inhibitions. Versus like us grown-ups with all our hang-ups of like, oh my gosh, does Pia like me? Like, it's just wild.
Totally. It's just wild. So much to say about it. And I'm so optimistic. There's such a great conversation happening now about loneliness and social isolation. The fact that the Surgeon General named it as a pandemic in 2023. It's bad for Pi, but there's like a million startups running at this. I'd love to tell you, like, we've got the edge.
You're the only one, yeah.
No, there's a lot.
But you're the only one on this podcast.
I'm the only one on this podcast. So head to getpi.app, download it, tell your friends. But I'm so optimistic that we're going to make a difference and make a change on this. And we're going to create the conduit for people who are intentional to solve this problem when it comes up, because it does come up throughout our lives. It's, it tends to be new city, new job, friends leaving town, friends getting in relationships, friends getting married, friends having kids. When we get married, when we have kids, when our kids leave the house, if we get divorced, the loss of a spouse, there's like 10 inflection points over 30 years in our lives where we have a need for more friendship. When it happens, it's hard to name, it's difficult to admit, it's very acute, and it's not obvious how you solve it. It takes a lot of initiative to solve it.
Okay, Andy, this is just a blast. Thank you for like talking me through what you're doing. Also, I think literally everybody should read Burn Rate, including my mom, again, who is the only one listening to this podcast.
You want to hear something crazy about Burn Rate? I just got off a call earlier today with the potential A-list actor who is going to play my character in an upcoming scripted series about burn rate. Let's see what happens, but pretty cool.
Shut the front door. Yeah, I'm
What
sure you
excites
cannot
me
tell
about
me who
that
it
is
is.
no one, I can't tell you, but no one reads books anymore. Like, I don't know if you know this. How many books do you think a bestseller, how many books do you have to sell to become a bestseller in the first year?
I'm just gonna like throw out a number.
Yeah, just instinct.
100,000? Is
Yeah,
that
it's
an
like
absurd number?
40 to 100,000. And so if
That's
you
like
think
it's a
about,
consultant win, right? Like it's
yeah,
like a
and
little
what that's
McKinsey test, yeah.
back to McKinsey, glad we were socializing and living it up, right? So figure what, 25% of those get read, 50%.
Oh yeah, because they're all just
You
like shelf
don't
books.
really reach a lot of people. Books are beautiful ways to get important ideas out in the world to a tiny number of people.
Yeah.
And that's why the screen conversion excites me so much, because that's where, if we're going to make a difference talking about that bipolar is far from a death sentence, that it could even be in a weird way a harbinger of a magical life. To really get that message out, screen is going to be such a powerful medium for that. So fingers crossed.
Oh my God, I cannot wait to sit on my couch, press play. But people should read it if they read one book this year. So, Andy, thank you for hanging out with me.
Thanks, Roxanne. This was fun. Thanks for having me.
I've been waiting my whole life to say this. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, and follow us on LinkedIn, because that's the only social media platform where we hang out.